And now I will screen share. All right, so hopefully you guys are all seeing my screen here. And I wanted to talk about outreach in the time of COVID. I'm the Director of Strategic Communications at Canada France Hawaii Telescope, and this is an incredible amount of the work and effort that I do. And so let's move on. So just if you're not familiar with CFHT, we're the Canada France Hawaii Telescope. We're a 3.6 meter facility on the summit of Mauna Kea, joint facility of the National Research Council of Canada, the French equivalent, and the University of Hawaii. We also work with Taiwan and China. Our headquarters are located in Waimea on the big island of Hawaii. And so I always like to show a map of Hawaii and then show exactly where Waimea is. One of the things that this map doesn't truly show is how incredibly rural our community is. So Waimea is a town of maybe 12,000 people. If I want to go to Target or Costco, it's a 45-minute drive. A lot of the students that I work with, not only on the Big Island, but across the state, are from these very rural communities. And so as you can imagine, all of the issues with COVID just magnified food insecurity, the inability of many students to connect to the internet, and a lot of other kind of cracks that we have in Hawaii as we have everywhere else. And so a lot of that context came into how we were doing outreach. So the picture on the right is our base facility in Waimea. I have not regularly sat at my office there since, I want to say, like mid-March. I've been working from my dining room table. And so that in and of itself brings a lot of its challenges. The picture on the left is the Canada France Hawaii Telescope on Mauna Kea. So that's our summit site. Both of these sites are incredibly important for me when I'm doing outreach because I am able to offer tours to both facilities. So I regularly would bring the middle school science club into our base facility. We would chat. I think I met with them almost quarterly. A lot of summit tours where we could take people 16 and older. The Kama'aina Observatory Experience is one of them. That's a larger Mauna Kea Observatories initiative, but the idea is we would facilitate summit visits for free. We had vans, we had cultural and astronomical experts speak and take people to the summit. Couldn't do either of those. So what does that really look like? So this was outreach in 2019. The big theme in all of this picture is people. My job is fundamentally explaining astronomy to people. And so my job, if I went from this to this. So my husband very kindly took this picture of me sitting at my dining room table. I have you can see my stuffed planets and baby Yoda. I don't have all of the stuffed planets. Some of them are still with my coworkers. And this is where I have been working and trying to do the job that I do. So that led to a bit of a mini existential crisis when March came and we started to get closer to April. And how do I do my job when I can't talk to people? And I think this meeting, the AAS meeting, is a fantastic example. I normally would be sitting at a booth. We would be having conversations. People would come by. We could talk about outreach. I could also importantly talk to some of my collaborators face to face, have conversations about the things that we want to do. Additionally, a lot of my work is talking to students K through college, K through graduate school. And the challenges that I have in explaining astronomical concepts via Zoom, I just didn't quite know how I was going to do this and how we as an outreach community were going to do this. Now, I'm very fortunate that there is a robust outreach community on the Big Island. So I wasn't in all of this alone. And that's really, as I started to think about it, I developed my new philosophy for 2020, and it's thus far carrying into 2021. We'll see how far it goes, but my idea is if it's a spectacular success or a spectacular failure, let's try. And so this has kind of been the guiding principle that I've had for a lot of our events, a lot of our initiatives, a lot of the videos that we've made. If it's going to go well or it's going to go poorly, you know what, let's just try and we will use it as a learning experience. And so for the rest of the talk, I'm going to go through all of, it's not a complete version of all of the work that we've done, but some of the initiatives that we've tried, some of them I would say have been spectacular successes, the word that I forgot on my PowerPoint here. I haven't had anything I would call a spectacular failure, but we definitely had some road bumps along the way. So the first thing was, how do we transition favorites? I'm a very big note taker, and I also have an incredible amount of lists. And so if I'm doing an event, I pull out the list from last year. What did I do? These are the people I need to talk to. I have timelines, all of that kind of stuff. All of that kind of went out the window, obviously, with COVID and so many other things, and so many other people's lives were much more derailed than mine. But this is, kind of, how did we transition those classic events? So one of them is the winter star party. So annually at CFHT, we have a star party on the front lawn of our base facility. It's a great event to engage and bring the community in. We hold it the exact same day as the winter Christmas parade in Waimea. And that event there are more people in Waimea for the Christmas parade than live in Waimea by probably a factor of 2. People start lining up the night before. It's one of the biggest parades that we have on island, and it's an evening parade. And so I've worked for years very closely with the parade organizers, helping them with the parade logistics. CFHT has provided a lot of very large black garbage bags that people can take out and clean up trash, and those are the kinds of things. So we're very heavily affiliated with the parade, our Winter Star Party. And we have all of these other events because inevitably it rains. So myself and my coworker, Callie Crowder, Callie's one of our remote observers, and she's been helping and taking a large amount of work on social media. So Callie deserves an incredible amount of credit for almost everything that I'm talking about here today. So Callie and I sat down and we thought, well, what if we just make the whole thing virtual? And then what does that look like? So we went through and had every single aspect of the star party and made a video about it. And fortunately, my coworkers were very on board with this. So normally we would have an Ask an Astronomer booth. So we had a live Ask an Astronomer Facebook Live. That went well. We had a fair number of people attend. We had a good number of questions, all recorded. It's on our website, and you can actually see some of the spikes in the page views that we had on our social media. Normally, one of my coworkers, Mark, operates a small telescope. Instead, he did a telescope buying guide. What do I get for people if I really want to get started? And one of the things that Mark did exceptionally well was he started off very simple with actually binoculars. If you're really interested in astronomy, the first step should be binoculars, and gave, good suggestions that gave people a lot of really fantastic information. We also did a virtual tour of our remote observing room, along with questions and answers. I did a craft video. Our executive director, Doug Simons, was convinced to read The Night Before Christmas. He always has people around the fire at our star party. He's in charge of the marshmallow and hot dog station. So this year we took that experience of him having, kind of a personal conversation and tweaked it a bit. The other thing that we tried was live stargazing from the Mauna Kea Visitor Information Station. This went well until all of our technology and all of our rehearsal and all of our telescopes wouldn't connect. And so we had this plan where they would be able to slew the little telescopes, and we had a camera, and that camera was connected directly to Zoom, and we were going to, talk. And that worked. We never saw an actual live Zoom picture. We had a great backup plan, and we went into essentially winter weather mode. For me, on my side of it, it felt like a train wreck, right? I thought all of a sudden I am answering questions, and I had really fantastic support from Ray at the Visitor Information Station, their manager, and Jamaica Marshall from Gemini Noir Lab. They were both up at the Viz, and Jamaica would say, okay, we're going to get this next target. Mary Beth, why don't you tell us about whatever the target was? We weren't going by the target list. And so for me, I'm sitting in my husband's office on a Saturday night, just kind of trying to figure out exactly what's going on and what's going next. And it was a great learning experience. I've given the Winter Star Party 3 shooting stars as in my success metric. So I'm going to say it was successful. What I learned from that is you just got to go with the flow. The whole time I was actually getting some texts from Callie, who was a observing. She was also just had it on in the background, and she was saying, this looks really good. And I was like, does it though? I think another lesson, and for all of us, and this is, so important, is that, there's the product and the end result is what matters to people. And so you might feel as though things have gone completely awry, but everybody else is happy, and they tell you that it was a great star party. And you just kind of have to realize and let go that sometimes things happen and you just go with the flow. And it was a spectacular success. So that is the grand prize winner from our Solar System Walk costume contest. Every year, myself, Carolyn, who's on the call here from Institute for Astronomy and Hilo, and Shelley Pelfrey from the Keck Observatory, we put on a solar system walk, and that is a physical walk from Keck's headquarters to CFHT's. We are currently working on the virtual version of that. We have been working on the virtual version of that since August. There's a lot of county permits and a whole bunch of other things. But we always have a costume contest because we do the event the week before Halloween. And so this year we did a virtual costume contest. The pictures that you see here are our honorable mentions, our category winners, and we collected all of these pictures online. We published it on social media, really pushed it out, and had people could either submit via social media or with a hashtag, or send us an email of their family or their picture. This was a family. This one won best use of tights in an adult woman. And so that was actually a special category from our judges. So what we did was we reached out to the community and found judges in the community, just like we normally would have done for the Solar System Walk. So we had Dr. John O'Mara, the chief scientist at the Keck Observatory, Michelle Hartman, who's the president of the Honokaa Business Association, who we're going to see here in this B-roll. I'm going to pause for a minute. And Brittany Kuahara, the social media manager for KTA, a local grocery store. And so we did this whole costume contest live on Zoom. It was part of our Mauna Kea MKO At Home live, which I'll talk about in a minute. It was a really great success. We had a lot of people tune in, way more than I was expecting. What we did that I totally thought was going to fail, and Carolyn and Shelley and I had gone back and forth on it, was we invited all of the finalists to be on Zoom. And so if you are on Zoom and you're doing like a Facebook Live or a YouTube Live, if you don't have a picture up, your face isn't on there. So we had all of the category winners, when their category was announced, they would turn their cameras on. DC, who's our local radio DJ, he went and announced the winners, and it was really great. It got fantastic news coverage statewide as well, because I think we were the only people that did this kind of Halloween costume. School visits have been a little bit trickier. I think we're kind of all looking at that. We were all in this Zoom box here, way more excited to talk to this student than it looks like in this picture. That was me doing a really bad screen caption. We did a virtual career fair, and these are my coworkers who were actually super excited to be there. One of our astronomers, Dr. Lori Rousseau-Neptune, has been doing a fair number of visits with Connect North, which is a Canadian program. She's one of our Canadian resident astronomers. It's a Canadian program to connect with First Nations that are at higher latitudes in Canada. And so she's been doing a lot of talks to those groups and those students, and talking about her work and her time at CFHT and her position. In the corner there is me making a Galaxy Mobile. It was actually a video request from one of the teachers that I work with. So I'm giving this 2 stars because I have yet to figure out how to actually engage the students. Most of the time when I go and do school visits, if they're elementary school kids, I don't use a PowerPoint. We just talk. I have demonstrations, the stuff planets come out. It's much more engaging. They actually walk around and do orbits. And I'm still trying to figure out how I do that. How can I give the students that same experience that different than sitting in the classroom and learning, or different than being on Zoom? And so that's an area that I'm constantly wondering, how do I do that? How do we do that better? I run a program called Maui Scholars. It's a student-driven research opportunity for Hawaii public schools. So essentially I work with 13 schools statewide. They're all high school. Every school runs the Maui Scholars program differently. The students write proposals and apply for telescope time on the Mauna Kea observatories to do their own astronomical research. They work with mentors who are predominantly Institute for Astronomy graduate students. Right now, my success on that is to be determined. Working with schools and working with the teachers, I have an absolutely tremendous amount of respect for the work that they do normally, but even more so now during COVID. Each school runs Mauna Kea Scholars differently. I work with students at one high school where the students are in what's called a credit recovery program. So these are students that school hasn't really worked for them. At some point, they have been told that they're not good at science, or they've lost interest in science, likely because someone has told them that they're not quite good at it, or they've struggled with it. And so the idea that we had for Mauna Kea Scholars working with these students is that there's a massive difference between learning science and doing science. Everybody attending the AAS meeting has an understanding of that. Science is an ever-evolving, ever-changing field. And what we wanted to do with Mauna Kea Scholars in general, but this class specifically, is give them the opportunity to do research, to learn, and have a project that's completely their own. And so I spend a lot of time visiting those students normally. Now I visit them on Zoom. So I've had, I think, 2 or 3 Tuesday mornings where I am 8 to noon with one teacher talking to all of her students, talking about answering their questions, astronomy picture of the day, all of those kinds of things. So I've got one school that's going really well. My other schools, because of the way that their school structure has started, they either can't do the program right now because they're an after school program, or they're transitioning to an after school program. I work with a couple of astronomy clubs. 2 of my teachers, their courses don't even start until the 2nd semester, and they're being expected to teach essentially a year worth of content in a semester. And so my question then to myself and to them is, how do I help you? How do we do this program in a way that's meaningful and impactful for your students, but doesn't add to your workload and burden? And that's a question that I am always asking. I'm always asking them. I'm always asking myself. And I'm really seeing some benefits with the cohort at my one school, because I can just Zoom anytime, but there's that lack of connection of them seeing a person right next to them, listening to them. Zoom just put such a wall between us that what's really important for me with this program is a connection with my students. So social media, again, this is how we transitioned. A lot of our social media highlights CFHT staff doing their jobs. That has been very difficult because most people are working from home. And there's only so many pictures that we can show of people at the summit doing things like this. So this is one of them. This is installation of a dry air system on the telescope. We have some pictures of my coworkers who are up there doing that. We started a series of, every month we have a theme for Sundays, and we do a fun Sunday landscape post, because we wanted to put something out there on social media that was pretty, that was, not leading to anybody's stress, that was just a nice calming image. So the slight caveat to that is this month we're showing lava pictures that all of my coworkers have taken with the new eruption at the Kilauea crater. Fortunately, the crater Hale Ma'u gets contained. It's right behind the visitor center, so there's no destruction at this moment in time. So we feel okay about sharing those pictures. We started a Pets of CFHT series. That one's been immensely popular. I think one of our most popular posts of the year was our executive director's puppies with their first bath. It was a video and people died. We also started doing the stuffed planets on my dining room floor. So you can see my floor here. Just showing what the equinox is, what that would look like, and still trying to bring the vibrancy of our staff. Again, I would give our social media 3 stars. One of the, particularly during COVID, one of the struggles that we have, and I think a lot of other facilities have with social media, is we have multiple audiences. So we have a very educated astronomers who are interested in, ooh, what's your new dry air system? Tell me more about that. We have a well-informed public who are interested in our research and the work that we do. We also have a general public who needs a little bit more information. And I think that divide is kind of stretched out even more during COVID. And so that's one of the things that we're constantly thinking about. We do our social media planning at the beginning of every month and figure out what are we going to do and how are we going to do this. We also started new initiatives. So the first one that I'm going to talk about briefly here, because I'm going to talk about it more at the Meet the Mauna Kea Observatory special session tomorrow, is MKO at Home. So MKO at Home is a collaborative effort across all of the Mauna Kea observatories that came out of that similar existential crisis that I mentioned at the beginning. How do we do our jobs? And this is one of, I would say, one of the more freeing programs for me, because I've always been terrified of making videos, because you see videos from facilities that have large staffs. You are looking at the Outreach and Communications Department at the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope. I have a lot of help from all of my coworkers, and I'm going to again give Callie a shout out. She's become very good and very fast at video editing in her spare time and on cloudy nights. And so what we decided was, okay, let's just see if it works. Let's just make videos explaining things, explaining what we do, explaining phenomena. So we, at this point, have made 53 videos. Today is a repeat. We're actually borrowing content from a collaborator. And they've really run the gamut. The supernova explosion that my coworker, Lisa Wells, another one of our remote observers, did up here was fairly technical. It was introduced supernova to an audience. It had that great demo that you see there, where she's dropping multiple balls. I talked about blue moons. It's a pet peeve of mine when I see on TV people, calling a blue moon or a harvest moon and not giving any sort of context to that, and really setting people up to go outside and be disappointed. If you're, a little kid and you hear blue moon, you're going to think the moon is blue. And how can we help kids not get turned off by space by going out there and having the moon look completely normal? I will say that was one of the hardest videos that I actually made, because there's way more nuances in blue moons. And that's a tricky thing to distill down into just a few minutes. We also had crafts. So Callie's making a rainbow CD there. We wanted to make sure that kids had something to do, particularly in the earlier stages of the lockdown, that was effective, low cost, and could use materials. We also replicated our annual Astro Day. So Carolyn, our Astro Day organizer, is actually on this Zoom right now. So Carolyn organizes an Astro Day at the Prince Kuhio Mall every May. Every facility sets up a table. People come to the mall. They don't always know what they're in for, and they see exactly all of the work of the Mauna Kea observatories. And so we recreated that with 3 weeks of videos every single day, including our annual coin contest that we will actually be launching next week. And Nadine Manset, the Espérance instrument scientist and astronomy group manager at the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope, one of my coworkers, she runs this contest every year where kids design a coin. And so now this year she's trying to figure out, how do we do that? How do we do that virtually? MKO at Home has been way more successful than I thought it was going to be. It definitely falls into the spectacular success category. We are limited in staff at each facility, so we're trying to figure out now, like, how do we repurpose content and how do we keep this going? But I'm exceptionally proud of the efforts of this program and the work that was done across the observatories. Callie and I tried to replicate that at CFHT with our Crafting with Science and 1 Minute Science. Both of this is getting 2 stars, because we realized that it's really hard to distill things down into a minute. So the reason that we gave ourselves a minute was that's how long you can post on Instagram before you have to go to IGTV. And so 1 minute asteroids, meteors, and meteorites was pretty straightforward. That one I was able to knock out pretty quickly. Other things, like when we were trying to explain the solstice in 1 minute, that got really tricky. And so we've put a pause on these on 1 Minute Science, and we're rethinking how can we do it differently? How can we listen to the feedback that we've gotten? We also ran a survey during COVID, what people were interested in on our social media. How can we get that feedback and maybe scale some things up to be at a higher astronomy level and scale some things down to be even more basic? The only problem with crafting with science is that at some point, Callie and I are going to run out of craft ideas. Other initiatives that are completely non-astronomy related is the Hawaii STEM Community Care. And so this is transitioning from the work that we normally do in the community to something completely different. And so High STEM Care works, it's a hui, it's a group of people who are in the STEM industry or affiliated with it, who join together to create PPE for first responders. So you can see here in this picture, this is my coworker, Greg Green. Greg is our instrument designer and machinist. Greg designed these door openers. So it's a hands-free door opener. And he and his team of volunteers, who are all socially distanced, made 524 of these door openers in the CFHT shop. And these door openers have been distributed across the island for medical professionals and medical institutions and first responders. And so this was something that came out of a need that we heard from our community. And Greg said, I could make that. And so he made that. The other picture there is an image of our executive director, Doug Simons, and Dr. Craig Berger. Dr. Craig is the physician who's on the High STEM Care team. And one of the things that he was particularly concerned about, him and the fire department, we have a fire department representative on the team. He and the fire department were very concerned about reusing N95 masks. How do we not or sanitize N95 masks? And so there was a team in Colorado that had a design for a UV light sanitizer. And so what ended up happening is Doug, along with Christian Wong, who's a firefighter and the president of the Hawaii STEM and Technology Museum, and many others, they decided, well, we could build these sanitizers. So Doug built a prototype in his garage, and they were rigorously tested at the University of Hawaii Hilo's biology department. And what happens is you put this mask in this little box there, you turn on the light for 10 minutes, and the UV light completely sanitizes the mask, making it safe to be worn again. So after the testing was done, Doug made 24 of these boxes in his garage, and they've been donated to predominantly the Hawaii Fire Department, but also a health center in Kona. So I'm giving that one 3 stars. It was an area that we had never worked in. Never in a million years, when I talked to you at January AAS, would I have said, yeah, I think I'm going to write a news release about how Doug created UV light sanitizers in his garage to help with the global pandemic. It was not even something that I ever would have considered. Similarly with Greg's tremendous efforts, these hands-free door openers, they're not actually finished in this one. They have some other pieces to make them safe. And this, again, came out of a need from our community. One of the big projects that I've worked with over the past COVID times is called Keiki Heroes. So it came out of that STEM community hui. And the idea that I had was there's no material for kids. We scoured all of the websites, and this is back in June. We scoured websites and we realized that most of the material that was online was how to talk to kids. What about kids? How are we talking to them directly? And how can we empower kids? It's one of those things we had been expecting students to go back to school in person a lot sooner. On the Big Island, it's still predominantly remote learning. Some of the schools are slowly bringing grade level by grade level back based on the size, but many students are working from home. And so with Keiki Heroes, we've got this whole program, and you can go to the website. But the idea is we have 2 superheroes, Kai and Hoku, who practice and empower local students to have good behaviors, washing your hands, wearing your mask, social distancing. And those are the kind of materials that you see here. We've got a Respect the Bubble sticker, that's Kai with his surfboard. Above that, you can actually see this is the front and back page to our activity book. We have a 16-page activity book. We worked with a local artist, Yuko Green. And so she created this whole activity book that has word searches, and it has the origin story, how to be a hero. And that book has been translated into 14 different languages. So the one in my slide here is actually the Hawaiian version. And so what I learned, is the number of different small pockets on the big island that critically need help and assistance. And the nice thing about Keiki Heroes is that we're able to try and help them. So I know a lot about some of the migrant communities in West Hawaii, about the Pacific Islanders and the struggles that they're having. One of the biggest things for me was when we were sending out these materials, I was talking to one of the community organizers, and I asked if he would want coloring sheets. And he said, yes, of course, but we don't have crayons. So Keiki Heroes has purchased thousands and thousands of crayons. I think I have 2 boxes of them actually just arrived at the office, and we give crayons. So if we're going to see that barrier, we're going to figure out, okay, so now kids don't have crayons. Crayons are easy. I can buy crayons. And we've received, as the Keiki Heroes team, about $175,000 worth of funding from the county of Hawaii and Vibrant Hawaii, who's another one of our big sponsors, which is a group that received money from the CARES Act, plus additional donations. A fair amount of the printing of the early Keiki Heroes materials was done using the CFHT printer, the KEK printer, and the IFA printer. So we put some printers to use, figured no one else was printing, so we can print a whole lot. And one of the reasons for the emphasis on paper is to kind of bridge that digital divide. So we have a website that has a lot of the same materials that you can do if you're a student, or you're a Keiki who has an iPad, who has a phone, who has a computer, who can do those things. We also have a lot of materials that are paper for students that are, maybe need a break from always being online, maybe need something a little bit different. They want to, flow their creative juices. So to that end, we had a Keiki Heroes Halloween costume. Note to myself and the rest of the world, do not run 2 virtual Halloween costumes the same week. It's a lot. I didn't think that it would be as much work as it was, but it was a lot. At Christmas, we also had these Keiki Hero coupon books. And so we were able to give kids something to give to their parents, because we also want to work on social, emotional well-being and a feeling of gratitude, and how the holidays would be different this year. So I give that one 3 stars, mainly because we distributed 55,000 items across Hawaii Island. That's about 1/4 of the population received something from Keiki Heroes. I'm immensely proud of this project, and it loops back to my earlier comment. If I had been told in January at last year's AAS meeting that I would be involved in such a project like this, I'd be like, how does that happen? We also, CFHT, not only as our facility, but as the Mauna Kea Observatory's community, stepped up in food distribution. So this is my coworker, this is Wendell, and this is Kahea. Wendell was affiliated with a group through his wife that had access to food boxes. These produce boxes that you can see here is a lot of produce. And there was no way to get the produce from Hilo to the people who needed it in Waimea. And so CFHT offered its truck. Wendell asked, and Doug gladly let him use it. And so Kahea and Wendell went to Hilo every Friday for months. They picked up all of these produce boxes. And at first they delivered them to a site, and people came and picked up the food. At some point, that site was no longer able to have people come there, and that's when CFHT started distributing food boxes. And that was a tremendous learning experience. We had cars lined up. It didn't matter what time we said the food distribution would start. If we said it would start at 4, we would have cars starting to line up at 1. If we said it started at 3, we would have cars starting to line up at 12:30. And our offices, if you remember from that picture at front, our offices are on the main road in Waimea. We have traffic going there, the food's getting there, people have their cars turned off. You know, is it one box per house? Is it one box per car? Is it one box per family? All of these logistical things. It was a tremendous learning experience. And we also gave distributions and helped support the food basket distributions. This is my coworker, Patty. She's our executive director's executive assistant. Here she is handing out materials at Halloween. There was some Keiki Heroes materials. There was also Halloween candy and a whole bunch of fun things for kids, so that while they were waiting in that food distribution line with the food basket, or when their parents got home, they had something that was a little bit different for them, in addition to all of the food and supplies that they needed. So this is a 3 stars. It's a tremendous amount of work that Wendell and Kahea did that I just really wanted to make sure got highlighted and acknowledged. So this is lessons from my dining room table, wrapping up my presentation now. The first thing that I'm going to say is exit your comfort zone. What I learned from this is we have to get out of astronomy and education solely, particularly for facilities so rooted in a community. I knew that, and I tried to do that, but I found with COVID that really shoved me out of my wheelhouse. It shoved me out of that, just talking to teachers at schools, which is fantastic. I met a lot of new people, the whole Keiki Heroes team. I didn't mention my work sewing masks and working with an entirely another group of people through Connect Aloha that worked on very similar issues. What I found is very helpful is my role in a lot of these facilities is I know teachers, I can talk to them. We can discuss how education works. I can say, oh, you want to distribute activity books to schools? Well, maybe we should go to the complex area superintendent and work those networks. And that's what I'm able to bring to all of these different groups that I'm working with. Zoom is exhausting. I think we all know that, but I just wanted to say Zoom is exhausting, particularly when you are doing virtual presentations. Why I'm so used to talking. My dad was a high school physics teacher. And so every time I ever saw him teach or he would talk to me, it would be like, do you get that? Do you understand that? Are you following me? And that's something that I've picked up, that when I'm in a classroom and looking at these students, I can say, okay, do you get that? But do you really understand that? No. Okay, let's reboot. Let's go back and start from the beginning. And I can't really do that on Zoom. You know, right now I'm assuming that you're all listening, but you might not be, and that's okay. I understand that, you know, life gets in the way. And that's another thing that I tried to do is, I don't have any children myself, but when I'm in these meetings with people who have kids, if your child walks behind you, that's okay. If you have to turn your volume and your camera off and only speak when you have something very important to say because there's chaos surrounding you, that's okay. I think that's a little bit of grace that we all kind of need to lend each other. And I hope that continues past COVID. But again, Zoom, exhausting. People comment on your backgrounds. So as I mentioned, I am working in my dining room. I have, as you saw in the one picture, a shelf of all of my appliances here. And over here is my bar. And so the number, I didn't realize how visible like 2 bottles in the bar was. And that was like the topic of the beginning of almost every Zoom call that I had was, oh, what you got over there? And just a general discussion. So people comment on your backgrounds. I'm not saying you need to change anything. My bar is still there, but it's just something that I learned. It's like that kind of fourth wall that is broken. Virtual events have a greater reach, but they require greater work. And I think for me, where a lot of that comes from is because I do a lot of events and I have them all pre-planned. And so this is what you do. You hand people materials, people come and volunteer. When you're doing video, you have to edit that video. You have to put that video up somewhere. You have to cajole people to be on videos. There are a lot of people who just have wonderful knowledge, but refuse to do a video because they don't want their face on the internet. That ship has sailed for me. I have a lot of videos. Carolyn is one of those people, but I'm always getting her to be in videos. The solar system walk is a great example. We have been creating videos for the solar system walk since March. I did hire a video editor. She is a just graduated in December community college graphic design student who has done an absolutely amazing job on our videos, but we still had to find people to make them. We had to do the content, and we're like 6 steps away from the solar system walk, but we're so much closer than we were literally last week because I have videos. And I'll talk more about the broader Mauna Kea Observatory's outreach efforts in our session tomorrow. You can't help everyone, but you can make a massive community impact. One of the things that I didn't have a picture of because I couldn't find one is my coworkers went along with my absolutely crazy vision to provide craft kits to 600 kids on this island. I wanted to help every kid. I know on this island that there are a lot of kids that just don't have things, that don't have something fun that they can do because of COVID. And I knew that I couldn't help everyone, or I was told repeatedly that I couldn't help everyone. And my coworkers rallied. We put together these paper bags, and in it was an entire craft that we would have done at the star party. I threw in Keiki Heroes materials. There were stickers. We folded them and put a CFHT sticker on all of them and then distributed them. And that was a massive impact for those kids. I heard from some of them. We also, when passing out Keiki Heroes materials, the last pass out that I personally did was December 23rd, and it was at the food basket in Honokaa. We were out of materials before the distribution even started. We walked along all of the cars and handed out the materials that we had that were activity books for kids. And that was a massive impact in a small area. So that's always, I think, good to know. We can't help everyone. You can't reach everyone. Perfection can be the enemy of success. This is me in videos. I will shoot a video like 10 times because I don't like my first 5 sentences. If I get past the first 5 sentences, you get what you get, but I just have this vision of how it should start. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we don't see people as interested in doing videos and why we're not able to always get people to engage virtually, because they think it needs to be perfect. And it doesn't. Right now during COVID, your best is good enough. And I'm going to say every day outside of COVID, your best is good enough. Listen, learn, and help. And this is something that the first part of that is so critical. With high STEM cares, we listened. What do first responders actually need? Not let me tell you what I can make you, but what do you actually need? Okay, we can do that. Keiki Heroes was another one of that. We listened to what we were hearing from educators, and we learned and we helped. And so that last one is something that I think is so critical to keep in mind moving forward. Listen to what people are asking for, learn what they need, and help them the best that you can. So I just want to give a shout out to all of my coworkers. This is a going away Zoom party, which we didn't even touch in this talk. And this is if you want to learn more about CFHT. We are here all week. We have a booth. You can follow us on social media, any of those kinds of things. So does anyone have any questions? And that's my talk. I'll stop my share.